introduction, Ms. Chandra Alexandra.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Good morning. Can everybody hear me in the back, on the sides? Before I begin this morning, I'd like to say what an honor and a privilege it is to be speaking before you here this morning. When Tom Stauffer first approached me and asked me if I would like to speak at this breakfast, I asked him what time it was going to be. He said 7:30, and my comment was, is that before or after dinner? When I realized it was 7:30 in the morning, it was okay, because I had already decided that this was something that I wanted to do, that educating students is something very near and dear to my heart. When I look at all of you sitting here today, I feel what an enormous responsibility and opportunity you have. As educators, you are so much more than the subject matter that you teach. You actually spend more time in the classroom with your students than many parents spend at home with their children. I grew up with a love of learning. My father was a teacher, and when he died in 1999, around his bedside, along with his immediate family, was his favorite student. That relationship was as strong 30 years today as it was 30 years ago. They had forged it in 1969, and it grew and grew over the years. As a little girl, I thought my father knew everything. We had a game in my family. Because he was a teacher, we thought he was really, really smart. My brothers and I used to come home from school if we were working on a science project or doing something in history class. We would come home and we would try to stump him. I really don't remember exactly what we talked about or if he really knew everything he said he knew. But it was back in the days before the internet. And he would pull out the encyclopedias, we would sit on the floor, and we would learn about whatever subject we were talking about that day. That was when I developed a love of learning. And more importantly, it was when I realized what a wonderful time I was having with my father. What a wonderful relationship that was. How we learn is always in the context of a relationship. As an educator, you're responsible for creating a relationship that inspires. We so often go right to the subject matter, the reading, the writing, the math. And it goes without saying that you have a responsibility to teach your students these subjects. But unless you're able to deliver the subject matter in a way that's accessible, that's interesting, and unless you're able to truly connect to your students, you're never going to really feel satisfied in the classroom. One thing for sure I figured out, because as a life coach and as a therapist, I think of myself as a teacher of sorts. Students learn because they want to learn. And when they want to learn, it's because you have inspired them in some way, and they want to learn from you. Ultimately, regardless of what you do, if at some point your students do not feel a love of learning, if you are not successful in passing that love along to them, you will always be frustrated in the classroom. When you're able to develop a relationship with your students, they want to learn. They want to pay attention. They want to hear what you have to say. You've heard it said before, people do business with people they like. Well, guess what? Children learn from people they like and respect. It's that simple. When I look at children, because I see a lot of children in my practice as well, I look at them as little mini-me's. They're us, only smaller. I don't know about you, But when I go to hear someone speak, I'm like a kid. I'm waiting for that person to grab my attention. The last thing I want to do is sit there and be bored. But there is nothing I can do unless the person talking inspires me in some way. I'm not saying you have to entertain your students. Don't misunderstand me. But I am saying you need to be authentic and you need to connect. Regardless of a child's age, children know that they come to school and they have a job to do. I don't know if you can remember, but I remember going to first grade. And I remember thinking, I'm supposed to learn. That's what my job is. But like us, they need to be inspired. They need to learn how to listen, how to pay attention. They come into the classroom with a kid attitude. And the kid attitude is kind of like, okay, give me your best stuff. Let me see what you got. They're waiting to see who you are. And unless you gain the respect of a classroom of 7-year-olds, they will never want to learn from you. So what I would like to talk to you about today is the possibility of looking at all of this from a little bit different perspective. Ask yourself, how can I create an environment that inspires students so that they will want to learn from me? Understand that the onus of teaching is on you, the educator. It's not on the students. You need to take responsibility for creating a classroom that inspires, that motivates, and that challenges. Some of the things I'd like to talk to you about today are some of the things that I've spent a lot of time thinking about. Remember, when you walk into the classroom on the first day, what you create at the beginning is what you have in the end. The first day of school is an amazing opportunity for you. It's a defining moment for you as an educator, and one that will not come again. It's like the beginning of any relationship. The relationship will grow and flourish based on the foundation that you lay today. You have the ability to create what you want. Respect, dignity, boundaries are all established at the beginning of a relationship. Look at your own life and be really, really honest with yourself. Are not the relationships that you have today the good ones as well as the ones that aren't so good, based on the foundations that were laid at the beginning? If the parameters of dignity and respect were not set, the relationship you have today do not have those parameters as well. If you do not have dignity and respect in your classroom, you will always be trying to catch up. But here's the wonderful thing that you have going for you. Even if you do mess up a bit at first, even if you don't get it on the first day, the wonderful thing about children is their openness. There's a saying in Sanskrit called tabula rasa, and what that means is blank slate. That's why out of the mouths of babes, children come into the world like a blank slate. They just don't have a bunch of stuff up in their heads like we do. They don't rationalize. They don't think, you know what, I really don't want to learn from her because she said this and she said that. The moment that you inspire them, the moment that you connect to them, they want to learn with you. They are very, very present-oriented, and they never remember what happened 5 minutes ago. The children that you teach simply haven't been on this planet as long as you have. They just don't have a bunch of stuff up in their heads. They really want to share. They really want to be open. And they're waiting for that opportunity. Remember, your classroom is a mirror. It is a reflection of you. If in the past you found yourself complaining about your students, if you tell your colleagues your same story about your class again and again. I would not do that anymore. This is your classroom. Metaphorically, you're the king, and this is your kingdom. If the king is not happy what's happening in his kingdom, he looks to himself to make the changes. Looking out there is not the answer. Looking in here is. Another way to create an environment that inspires learning is to set up a teacher-student relationship from the beginning that's based on dignity and respect. The most important way to do that is accountability. Remember, children learn by modeling. That is, they watch you. Being accountable literally means you do what you say you're going to do. My best friend was a teacher for 25 years. She told me about the time in her classroom when there were 4 boys who were acting out. She was a science teacher, and even though she's been retired for 10 years, she still considers herself a teacher today. She looked up and she said, okay, the next person who speaks is going to the principal's office. Well, the next person who spoke was a very nice young girl who was really the best student in her class. And she was really telling the girl next to her that she had dropped something on the floor. But guess what? That young girl went to the principal's office. And at that moment, everybody started paying attention. Remember, what you set up in the beginning is what you have in the end. If, in the beginning of a relationship with your students, if you say you're going to do something and you don't do it, you're never going to have the respect of your classroom. You know what's amazing about kids? They have an uncanny sense of justice. It's just unbelievable. They can't remember that you've told them 100 times to clean their room. They can't even remember some good thing that's going to happen to them. But if you said something that you were going to do and you don't do it, the first thing they say is, you said. Children test boundaries. That's their nature. That's what children do. That's how they learn about themselves in the world. What's possible, what's not possible. They just automatically keep stretching until someone says stop. They are actually waiting for an adult to step in and to give them some direction. That stopping point keeps them safe and lets children keep being children because they know someone else is in charge. The minute they know you're in charge, you gain their respect. Accountability, respect, boundaries. For children, they need to have a safe environment in order for them to learn. In order for children to learn, they must be open to learning. And in order for them to be open, they need to feel safe. When I talk about feeling safe, what I mean is that in your classroom, students can make mistakes without feeling foolish. To learn something new implies that we enter unknown territory. Every time you enter unknown territory in your own life, do you not feel a sense of anxiety? If children don't feel that the classroom is a safe and loving place, and I do mean loving, they will never get excited about learning and never be willing to participate in the process of discovery. To be creative, to use your imagination, to problem solve outside the box, children must be willing to share things that up until this point have only existed in their head. As educators, you need to ask yourself, do you create a non-judgmental classroom that celebrates individuality and diversity? Do you set ground rules to to make sure students treat one another with dignity and respect? And do you step in when you see one child diminishing or hurting another? Kindness goes a long way. And the way you treat your students is the way they will treat you and the way that they will treat one another. Remember, what they are going to get in your classroom has the ability to set a course for the rest of their lives. What about mistakes? Do you celebrate failure in your classroom as well as success? Do your students know that failure is as much a part of life as success and that we learn by our mistakes? It's not just teaching students to accept failure and keep moving forward. That really misses the point. We need to change the paradigm of failure from something bad to something that signals a new beginning. Every time we get up after a failure, we have increased self-esteem and self-respect, and the stronger we get. How we feel about success and failure and how we treat our students is a direct result of how we feel about ourselves. If we are ashamed when we make a mistake, or we have trouble admitting when we're wrong, we will pass that same feeling along to our students, and our students will not feel safe in our classroom. Children need to be encouraged to stretch and to grow and to not be afraid of not being perfect. They need to feel supported in the journey of learning and know that making mistakes is part of the process. Another way to create a safe environment is to motivate children from the inside rather than the out. Pitting students against one another in competition is never really a good motivator. Grades motivate from the outside already. And although they may be necessary to quantify numerically a student's ranking, they'll never go the distance. They'll never really create a level of learning. Instead of encouraging competition with one another, encourage inner competition, competition with the self. Encourage students to be the best that they can be for themselves, to keep stretching and growing. Teach them that they have the ability to create their world by the choices that they make, and that the only thing worse than making lots of mistakes is doing nothing at all. Teach them that only they know what makes them tick, and teach them how to listen to their own inner voice. When you teach children to be self-referring rather than other-referring, what that means is that they determine their sense of self-worth rather than letting it be determined by others. This allows them to be self-accepting. They accept their failures as well as their successes, and they just keep moving along. Lastly, if you want students to connect with you, you have to connect with them. The connection that you make with your students is what will create your learning environment. I encourage you to take the time to connect to each and every one of the students in your classroom. Sometimes this only takes 3 minutes, but the connection, once made, lasts a lifetime, and you have a friend forever. Your classroom will be a cross-section of the easiest to the most difficult. If I'm honest with you, there are some of my clients I like better than others. There are some that are easier than others. What I do is I use the most difficult clients as a barometer for what I need to work on. I'm the educator. I'm the teacher. I need that person sitting across from me to get it. And unless I can connect with the person that's sitting across from me, I can never really do my work. ultimately, the student-teacher connection gives you feedback. It really nourishes your soul. When we have a student who gets it, something inside of us comes alive. We get energized. We know we have made that connection and the cycle is complete. I want to thank you again for having me this morning. I wish you great success in your school year. Thank you again. Thank you very much.